These 6 games have felt like a lifetime. We are here. We are here. Welcome back to the Coach's Huddle. It's your boy, the coach, where the field meets family. And we are back for another scheduled programming of the Faithful Review. I'm flanked to my side by my guy, my right-hand man. We go back like 4 flats on a Cadillac. My man, Tom Jensen. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing well, Coach. How are you?
I'm doing phenomenal. Right now, we're looking at 1 quarter down of the season, going into week 7. We're a little over a quarter down, but going into week 7. Yeah. And there's a lot to talk about. The team has only lost 2 games, but I feel like these losses haven't been an opportunity for us to bounce back or something for us to go back to the drawing board to get better. I feel like each loss has taken a piece of us away.
And each win.
Yeah, and each win.
Every game's hard fought.
It seems like each win, we're coming out with some type of unrepairable nick, bruise, cut, something's going on. So the biggest thing that I want to get into right off the bat is I want to know how you feel about this. Life without Fred. Now, we brought this up definitely. We brought this up and definitely looked at what we did after Fred Warner incurred a catastrophic leg ankle injury. And we saw also the defense look different, rightfully so, right?
Yeah.
That's anybody would look different, right? Sure. But what I wanted you to do is highlight something that I didn't necessarily hear anybody touch on, which is how are teams going to specifically face us now? And there may have been some foreshadowing with how the Bucs changed up some things offensively once Fred went down. And I'd like you to go ahead and cover that, man.
Okay. So Tampa in this game, coming into it, passing middle, 26%. Fred goes down. Their passing middle in the Niner game is 40%. They took it way up. Mm-hmm. Pre-snap motion in the season, Tampa 37, Niner game 62. Because they were intentionally trying to confuse them, and it succeeded. You know, that play where Diamador Lenore had the blown coverage and the man wide open, that's the kind of stuff that they're looking to create. So that's what the Niners are going to face going forward is teams are going to attack the run middle, the pass middle, intermediate to deep, and they're going to try to confuse them. And Tatum Bethune can do a good job in the run, but he's not a good pass coverage linebacker. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot to ask for him to be the new quarterback of the defense when he's this inexperienced. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be a problem. Teams are going to attack them. You know, before the Niners controlled the middle of the field. Now it's their primary weakness. And that's hard for Saleh to do. He's got to coach them up.
Well, I don't want to take credit because this is something that I was thinking about, kind of racking my brain, and I came out with a couple of ways that the defense can match this. But I do want to give a little bit of credit. I was perusing the interwebs, and I saw this out here before. Okay, particularly Grant Cohn brought this up as well, and I agree with his take. I mean, you know, 2 things can be right at the same time, but I believe that you've got to insulate Tatum Bethune. He's got to be first and second down contributor in the run game. Dude, in the run game, this is going to sound crazy. He may not be as intelligently designed as Fred, but as far as physicality and bringing the boom at the point of attack, that's something that is going to be an uptick. Okay, this is something that this kid does. He gets downhill. One thing that I also like about Tatum Bethune is that he worked on his body He definitely, if we gotta rewind back the tape now that he's on here now. So we got to talk about what we saw from Tatum back in June and July. One of the biggest things that we saw from Tatum is that he definitely put on more muscle. He has his
Yeah.
NFL pro body. And good on him. If I was in his shoes right now, I'd be thinking like, my God, from your lips to God's ears. I'm so glad that I took this offseason seriously, because who is thinking to completely change my body because I'm going to get on the field after Fred Warner, one of the most consistent, greatest players that the team has ever seen. So good on him. Now, as far as caveats are concerned, what we would do with Tatum Bethune in the third, I wouldn't even try to scheme him up. I completely take him off the field. Or what I would do is I would throw him over at edge and see what he can do with pass rush skills to get him to be a able blocker. And then what you do is you take Jair Brown and throw him over on third down and let him be in the hole at that Mike linebacker spot on gotta have it downs in the third down territory on passing downs, where you can have a little bit more continuity of D Winters, Jair Brown, and then you see what you do with the safeties in the back end. But at least you know that for your short yardage downs, you got a little bit more pop back there with Jair Brown. Now, look, that's conceptual. It doesn't mean that it's actually going to play out in real time. One thing that I will say is that the biggest, I don't know, flying in the ointment, if you will, to that scenario is that middle linebacker is not an interchangeable position.
No,
it's not. It's very specific. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to just jump into the skill set during certain packages and think that, all right, I read the cliff notes on third and short for middle linebackers and I'm going to pull it off. And offenses start testing you in ways that could really cause gashes in the defense. So I do understand that we're going to have to see this play out in real time. But this is what we get. This is what we get when we get the guys in the building. I gotta be honest. You're not going to replace a Fred Warner, right? So the next best thing is to have somebody that you've been perceivably developing in the building.
Potentially, yeah. And so Bethune on first and second makes all the sense in the world, and he can fill that role. But quarterback of the defense, pass coverage, he can't. Now, should that be Jair? Maybe. I would like to see some Nick Martin, as Justin suggests in the chat. You've got a great athlete. Let's see what he can do. And I would also say use Chase Lucas, who is great in coverage and a threat as a blitzer. I think it's an X factor that they can use to confuse a defense and not know what Lucas is going to do. I want to see him in that role where you just have Bethune at linebacker and everybody else is another position. You don't have a hybrid linebacker safety like Jair on the field. You go with what you need. You get coverage and you get speed. That's what I would do.
I'm not mad at
one
that.
thing I wanted to add in terms of you don't replace a Fred. Yeah. ESPN.com had a good article today on trade options for teams. They went through the Niners. Jeremy Fowler, Dan Graziano. One of their ideas struck me as a really smart idea. It's Quincy Williams from the Jets. He's played with Saleh. He knows the system. Former All-Pro. Great in pass coverage. And so quarterback of the defense, pass coverage, there's your piece. And he knows the system, and he knows Saleh, and Saleh trusts him. He doesn't make a lot of money. He's $7 million this year. He's a free agent at the end of the year. The Jets haven't won yet. He's a possibility. Now, if you could get Quincy Williams for a fourth or a comp fourth, I do that because I think that improves the team markedly. And he's somebody, given that he's a pass coverage backer and good in the run, he's somebody you can use long term. You evaluate him this year, and then you see if you want to bring him back. But he's not that expensive because he's about to turn 30. And so that's somebody that I definitely look at. Another player they mentioned was Christian Harris in Houston. Used to start for the Texans. Now he's a backup for D'Amico. Knows the system. Good athlete. He's another one that they can look at, and he would be a cheaper option than Quincy Williams. But I would definitely look at Quincy Williams. I think that's a really good idea.
Hey, right now, you think that, we're not even halfway through the season right now. So being able to get this done before the trade deadline, do you think teams would be keen to even do business with us?
Yeah, I think that one of the things we're going to see when we're about to take this up in the next topic is that there's going to be a lot of activity. And so for the Jets, you're 0-6. Are you really going to keep a 29-year-old linebacker who's about to go into free agency? Probably not. So that's an opportunity. They could sell him for somebody that wants him more, but he fits exactly what the Niners need. Pass coverage, experienced, smart.
What do you forecast for us if we don't make any moves at the linebacker spot? I mean, are these guys going to grow before our eyes, or is this just going to be yet another hole?
It's going to be another hole for the time being. I think that Tatum Bethune, as he gets more games under his belt, will improve. Nick Martin, once he gets an opportunity, will improve. But Martin is raw. He's a great athlete, but he's not a solution in pass coverage either. But he had a lot of tackles for loss at Oklahoma State last year. He's a great athlete. He's fast and he's strong. So he's a guy that just his physicality alone can contribute.
They don't think he's ready. That's been like the
No.
conversation with him for a while now, saying that, they much rather lean towards readily available players for special teams and, guys that help more with infrastructure and things like that as far as game day is concerned. I think that they're doing themselves a huge disservice by shelving this kid, because that's not this isn't who we are anymore, where you could get it Aaron Banks and sit him for a whole year. You know what I mean? Or
and that's Kyle. That's not Saleh. Saleh plays the rookies, which gives me some pause of what's wrong with Nick Martin that he can't even play yet. And I think that at this point, beggars can't be choosers. You've lost Fred. You've got one of the best athletes on the team, and Nick Martin, who hasn't played. He's been a healthy scratch. Play him.
Yeah. There's been a lot of healthy scratches, in my opinion. Not healthy scratches, but guys that need to emerge. I mean, honestly, for me, number 1 and number 1A and 1B are Jordan James and Jordan Watkins.
Exactly.
Those guys need to play, man. I don't understand why we're doing this one. The offense is slow, bro. I mean, and one of the things that I brought up yesterday, in yesterday's show is, I think the topic was, can the offense lead the team? Can this team be led by the offense?
It'll have to, is the thing. They don't have a choice.
I know, but one of the things that's going to be able to help some of these older guys in a Trent, in a Christian, even a George, like I've seen, look, I'm not a doctor and I hate to be a part of the yakety yaks, but I saw George warming up on at practice, man. He looked gimpy. He looked like he was trying to stretch it out, man.
I'm not sure they can count on him to play in this game. I'm really not. Now, his practice window is open, but Kyle said he was limited in practice today. I think that Kittle needs a ramp-up window, and that doesn't necessarily mean that's this week.
Yeah, I don't think from what I saw, albeit we probably saw the same clips, a slither of him moving around. It didn't necessarily, the last two words that came to mind when watching that clip was game and day. Like, he's just not going to be ready on game day.
It's going to be right on it. Yeah. But, we don't know how quickly he can recover, but now that he is open for practice, hopefully he starts to improve. We'll see. But based on what we saw in that clip, he's not going to play. So we'll have to see. He's got a couple days. Let's see what he can do.
All right. So let's get into our next topic, trade deadline. All right. So we've already kind of touched on it. We have segued into it. But before we get into specifics on guys who we think we should move forward, possible names that are out there, let's just go ahead and talk about the platform of the discussion, which is yay or nay. Do you believe that we should be sellers or buyers in the market right now? You've already given me kind of like a preamble, what you're going to say about how you feel about free agency anyway. But I just want you to go ahead and take the floor when it comes to just first off, before we get into names. Do you believe that the Niners should be active in the trade market before the deadline?
Depends on their record. What's going to happen in the next 3 games? If they lose 3, I think they'll be less likely to buy. But I still think they're inclined to buy because this team lacks depth and there's still pieces they can add. And so that's something they need to do, in my opinion. There's a lot of people that say no trades, keep all the picks. That applies to the big swing. That's, okay.
Don't subtweet me on my own platform. That was me. Okay.
That was Jesse. I was upset with Jesse, not you. Jesse was absolutist about this stuff. No trades at all. Keep all the picks. And it's just no.
Well, I
It
saw
doesn't
you
mean you're
at one
taking home
point.
run swings. It just means that you can still have singles
I
and you
saw at
can
one
still offer
point
stuff.
you did say in the chat that comp picks is on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you believe that tell me about, do you believe that this free agency market's going to be bullish this year?
I think the trade deadline market's going to be possibly the most active in league history because there's no great team. And so
Mm,
everybody's going to tell themselves, I make this trade, I can compete, I can contend, I've got a chance to make the Super Bowl this year because nobody's great.
yeah,
And so there's a lot of talk that I've heard of people just saying it's going to be a free for all, that this is not your normal NFL trade deadline where there's a couple deals and that's it. There's going to be a lot of activity.
yeah.
And
People
I think the
thinking that they
Niners are
got
going to
their
be a
guy.
part of that. It's just that they're going to come shopping at Dollar Tree. They're going to be saying, here's my comp fourth. What are you going to give me? As opposed to, here's my first for Trey Hendrickson. They're not doing that. Stuff like that. It's not going to be the big swings, in my opinion. But if you can make the little moves that help, Quincy Williams at linebacker, or Kingsley Enagbare, or Arden Key as an edge, somebody that isn't necessarily a high impact player, but someone that can contribute. Because right now they don't have depth and they need it badly.
Yeah. I got my eyes set on a guy too, as far as trade deadline is concerned. Ethan Pokic over offensive lineman over with the Browns. I'm telling you, that's somebody who I think that the Niners could take a stab at. He's 30, 6'6", 310 out of LSU. He's a center. I believe that they would right now, the money that he's due right now is, I think he's got a 4-year deal. What is that one? A
How
5-year
far
deal
in?
for $8 million. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
We can do something with that. I'll tell you right now, the biggest thing for me is understanding what we can do at linebacker without going to go get a guy right away. Because whatever you do at linebacker, it's not going to be Fred. I don't know. I got a little bit of Devondre Campbell PTSD.
Yeah,
So
I get that. Yeah. Well, and once upon a time we were both high on Jahad Campbell. Imagine if he was on the team right now. That would help.
dude,
But yeah, it's just I think that Quincy Williams would actually really help because the problem is that going forward, if they don't address the need to communicate and a pass coverage linebacker, that can contribute to a ton of losses. If they get Williams, he can plug that hole. And that's an important thing. If they want to say we want to be a wild card contender, then you make a move like that. And part of the reason why you can say, well, they're not going to the Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. And my argument to that is because you need your first and second year guys to get experience in a playoff game. It advances their development to play in that setting, and it makes them more ready for it the following year. That's the
they,
value on top of just having a player that helps and contributes.
they can afford him too. He's only making $8 million this year.
Right.
That's more than enough. That we have more than enough to bring him on.
Yeah.
All right. So if the trade deadline is where it's at, then let's get into our next topic, which is what are we fighting for? I understand that we talked about the next 3 games, but right now we have 3 guys who are back. Kyle Shanahan started off the season with, this team is going to look different by week 12. We're in week 7, so we got 5 weeks to go. Okay, before it's 5 weeks before we cure autism. So I'm just playing. So what I'm saying, well, shouts out to my boy RFK. So what I'm saying is what I'm trying to get into is basically where do we stand with the team getting guys back, right? I understand that we've battled now. Tampa was a tough loss. All right. The Jags was a tough loss. But we got 4 of them things. All right. And you got to be real. The Rams game was satisfying. It gave me a lot of hope to what we could do. All right. All right. And I understand that Fred was a part of that, but just as a whole, the rookies, Alfred Collins stood up in that game. A lot of guys had moments in that game. And you can't unsee that stuff. So the experience goes on with them, just without Fred. However, where I stand with this is where do we go when it comes to when it comes to getting the guys back, right? We're getting George back. We're getting Ricky Pearsall back. We're getting Brock Purdy back. Now, we already talked about George. We don't know if he's going to actually play.
Yeah,
And the
this week
same
or
with,
next.
yeah, and the same with Brock as well, right? But they are practicing.
Right.
Now, as we get guys back, presumably you would think we're going to get better, right? As we're getting our guys back. However,
Well, yeah, but especially Kittle because it impacts everything. It's the run game, the pass game, and red zone.
Well, we're getting back our best offensive lineman. That we're getting back. Yeah, we're getting back our best offensive lineman in George Kittle.
We need Kittle badly.
What I'm saying to you is this just a slow drip towards another disappointing season that all of these guys are doing are just hopping right back on the lost train? And, we'll get to see all of them lose together once they play and see that they're all old and they all can't pull it off. Or is this the real boost that we need? Is this a shot in the arm? Malik Mustafa just came back. We're going to get guys back we're going to get guys back in the receiving room. Presumably, it's not a topic, but one would think that we're going to get Brandon Ayuk back. So, what do you think? Do you think that this is kind of like just noise and we're going to be sitting here at the end of the season like we did all of this belly aching over all of these guys coming back and they all came back and they still suck? Or do you think that this is going to be the resurgence?
I think it's in between that they're going to get guys back on a drip. But once those guys get into game shape, they'll contribute and they'll be big contributors, especially Kittle. Mm-hmm. Kyle has said that Ayuk comes back week 10. We'll see if that holds true. But if you go through everything, you say Kittle this week or next, Purdy this week or next, Pearsall this week or next, because he didn't play in practice today. Mm-hmm. So it's not a given that Pearsall plays against Atlanta. And then you get Ayuk, and we'll see what they can do. But I think that over time, you've got the rookies developing, all the older guys in offense getting hurt and then coming back. So in theory, if they don't have more injuries, then they can do something. But will they somehow stay healthy for the rest of the team? That's the problem. That's my concern. Is you look at it and say, okay, they play the Giants on November 2nd, worst field in the league, ton of injuries always, and the Niners have had a lot of bad luck there. Mm-hmm. Can they escape from New York without more serious injuries? Will Christian McCaffrey finally go down in that game? Could be. And so I'm worried about them getting past that. If they get past the Giants game and they don't have any more major injuries, then I think they can make a resurgence late and can become a wild card team. But I don't think they'll do anything in the playoffs. But I still think there's value in that, in getting the young guys experience playing playoff football. So that would be my goal if I'm Kyle and Lynch, is how do I get to that point? How do I manage all of this so that we can get there? They've got talent coming back. It's just that you can't expect that talent to get back and be great overnight.
Hit the ground running.
It's going to take some time. And so once those guys ramp up and are in game shape and do contribute and the rookies elevate, that's a good team later in the year, provided that the rest of the team can stay healthy.
Well, you said it right there, Tom, elevating the rookies, because that's the beauty and the kind of like the perfect balance of a good team. What you want is the people that are in their prime and are your best players are your youngest players. That's what you want. You want guys who are coming into the front end of their prime, and those are the best players on your team. You want your depth to be ascending players, or you want them to be veteran players who have already played at a level that your starters have played at before. What happens is that you get the guidance and the wisdom and the culture from the veterans, but the veterans aren't the best players. The younger guys are the best players who are in their prime. Look at us in 2019. The best players were the young guys, right? The best players were Fred Warner, Deebo Samuel, okay? Those were the best players. Bosa, all right? But the veterans on the team were Richard Sherman, Emmanuel Sanders, D. Ford, okay? Guys that were not as good as the best players, but they had been to that level before, okay? Because what happens is that they steer from the back, and they have the wisdom and the time on task to build the culture. All right. Now,
Yeah.
competition is what keeps that ebb and flow refreshed. All right. But what happens is that when you don't let when the best players get too old, all right, and you start beating down the depth so these guys can stay the best, the barometer of the best starts dwindling with the age of the players that you keep in that spot. And that is what has happened to us.
Yeah, because it has a short shelf life. It
Mhm.
it degrades quickly. Ideally you want balance on the bench, because then you get that mix of young and old, where the old can lead the young can grow, and when you need those veterans, they can come through and make a key play at a key moment.
Mhm.
That's what you want. The Niners have had that roster before; they don't have it now. And
Yeah.
a big reason for that is arguably the worst draft in the NFL in 2022 and 2023. They got no one from either draft. They missed on every pick.
That's two generations of football right there.
That decimates a team, and that's why this team is in the place it's in, because of those two drafts in combination with losing the picks from the Trey Lance trade. And so that created a crater that they now have to build. They built it with this draft and this year, and now they're going to have to keep building it going forward. And we'll see what they can do. But right now, it's just they're scrambling. There's not a lot that they can do because the foundation isn't solid, because they don't have the depth.
Yeah, right now it's kind of the dynamic is lopsided, right? The younger guys aren't strong enough to take over the load that's being given to them right now. Okay. And then there's older guys who are telling them, well, back in my day, this is how things used to go. And these guys aren't even and then these guys aren't even finishing the season. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
yeah. Who are you, old man? Yeah,
exactly. So you can only have so much respect if a guy's playing or not. So it doesn't bode well. What I will say, I will be honest. I'm on your train. I'm in between. They've won 4 games. They're 4-2. We're coming into Atlanta. Atlanta's not perfect. They're going to be a live dog. I'll tell you that. But they're not perfect. And I believe that what we've seen, there's not a lot of guys, and I hate to say this, but there's not a lot of guys that could trot out backup quarterbacks and they can have career games. So we've got a lot on task. But my biggest point with the offense is they have to handle the run game. Even the defense, they had a bad showing of it once Fred left, and they've had their moments where they haven't looked good in the run game. But overall, we have been decent in the run game. We've been decent. We haven't been bad. We've been decent as far as stopping the run. Okay?
Yeah, on D.
On defense, yes.
Yeah.
On offense, if we just got comparable performance on offense in the run game, I guarantee we would probably put another 6 points on points per game. Honestly,
easy.
If we could average, what do you say, Tom? 80 yards a game?
Yeah, probably.
80 yards a game is all we need from the offense. That would turn things around.
Yeah. But we don't have that. And hopefully Kittle helps. Hopefully Ayuk, when he returns, helps. You had a great segment on with Chundaboy yesterday where you talked about the blocking in the perimeter from all the receivers and what they're not getting. And part of that is no Kittle, no Ayuk. And to Kyle's point on that, that's how you get the long runs that help your yards per carry go up. But I would argue against Kyle that part of the reason your yards per carry are low is because you're not getting anything in the red zone and you're getting way too many runs stuffed. And that's a problem too. So it's not just the explosives, it's everything. But the explosives, there's one alarming stat. McCaffrey is one of just 4 players that doesn't have a run over 15 yards in his first 6 games since 1975. 50 years, and he's one of just 4 backs who has a long of 15 or less. That's what they're facing. That's what they're going to need. And that's from Josh Dubow of AP. He always has these great stat pulls. And that's one of them, is just you can argue the offensive line's bad, and you're right, but you can also have to add that Christian has lost a step, and they have to deal with that. And what gets me what grinds my gears is Jordan James is the best between the tackles back on your team, and you have yet to play him once.
What did
Why?
he do?
Why?
I don't get it. Also, I got to be honest, the offensive line does need help. We play 11 on 11
Sure.
football. Outside zone is not a 5-on-5 endeavor. It's not. Receivers have to block because you're dealing with launch angles, you're dealing with points of attack, you're dealing with bouncing, reading, and cutting. And if the edge is completely getting, depleted every time, or if you don't have receivers at least holding the edge enough for linemen to reach to get out to the alley, there's no alley. All right, because the force defender is going to crash on your receiver. So I just did want to go over some of these. I tweeted this, but we can get into it a little bit in depth as far as the blocking with the receivers. So just for a little bit, based on the data that we've seen through the through week 6 of the 2025 season, these are the receivers that have been blocking. These are the run blocking snaps for the receivers that we have right now, ranked out of the league. The eligible receivers that are ranked is up to 126 receivers. You need to have had to been a part of 30 plus run blocking snaps to be a part of this list. Okay. Marquise Valdez-Scantling has 51 run blocking snaps. All right. That's his yards per block are 3.59 yards per carry. That ranks him 101st out of 126 qualified receivers with 30 plus run snaps under their belt. Ricky Pearsall leads all of our receivers with run block snaps of 73, but with a yards per block of 3.26 yards per carry, which ranks him 112th out of a possible 126 qualified. Jawan Jennings comes in at 68, and Kendrick Bourne comes in at 71 run block snaps. I did them together because both of their yards per block mimic each other at 2.7 yards per carry. They rank tied 123rd out of 126 possible ranked receivers in the NFL. And Demarcus Robinson brings up the rear with 39 blocking snaps. He has only been here for 2 games, I believe.
Yeah.
His yards per block is a 2.69, bringing up dead last in 126th in receivers in yards per block. Okay.
Unbelievable.
Now,
phenomenal stats, Coach. Props to you. But all of their receivers are in the hundreds out of 126.
Yeah.
That says a ton.
If you really want to look for context, to say, okay, well, who are the best guys in the league? Like, who does this? The best blocking receiver in the league right now is Terry McLaurin. He ranks at 6.11 yards per block. At 6.11 yards per block, being a part of 30 plus run blocking snaps in the league. If you think about what's going on in our own division, so the NFC West wide receiver yards per block rankings are Devontae Adams ranks first with 5 yards per block. He's 20th in the NFL. Puka Nacua comes in at 36th in the NFL with 4.6 yards per block, as well as Jordan Whittington comes in at 50th in the NFL at 4.31 yards per block. So the Arizona Cardinals are just as trash as us. And
they usually are because they draft small receivers.
Exactly. Michael Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Zay Jones are all bad. They're all in the 3s. Nobody's over 3 yards per carry.
Right.
But
it's just the Niners are far too low. In the past, they've never been that bad because they had Ayuk as one of the best run blocking receivers in the league. They had Juwan contributing a lot more than that. And as you say, Kittle being their best offensive lineman. And so getting Ayuk and Kittle back should help on that front. But you still have to deal with the fact that Christian's getting a ton of carries, Robinson's getting none, and James can't get out of whatever jail cell Kyle has locked him in. So it's just, what are you going to do? Even when you get those guys back and they've got the openings, can McCaffrey go through it?
No.
So
all right, man.
If I can, one thing on the chat, Frisco Shills asked, who are the other three running backs? Edgerrin James, James Stewart, Mike Pruitt. Those are the other ones. James in 2006, Stewart in 2000, Pruitt in 84.
Awesome. Let's get into a super chat. Savage AF24. We should look at EJ Speed, linebacker from Houston. He was solid with the Colts the past 4 years. He wouldn't cost much.
Anybody that played for D'Amico can fit, so that makes sense.
Yeah. Too much sauce. Are you happy with having Eddie Pinheiro over Moody? Yes. Yeah, you know why? Let's touch on this because, Jake Moody's been in the news lately.
Really?
But I'm happy for Jake. I said this right here on this platform. I said that it wasn't over for him. He needed a new atmosphere. That's the biggest thing. He needed a change in environment. No kicker deserves to be drafted in the 3rd round on a championship team, or that just came out of a championship loss. It was way too much pressure. And really, honestly, he didn't ask to be here. He didn't ask to get drafted in this situation, but I would completely feel different about my workplace if I had people coming up to me, choking out my long snapper, rocking, yelling at me. Then I go through a whole controversy. There was a quarterback competition. And I just think that, it was all downhill when he got hurt last year. And I knew that things were different for him when he, quote unquote, changed his kicking motion. It's like, bro, come on. You got to the NFL doing this.
Right. Everything got in his head, and then he got the yips. And so if there's anybody that's the poster child for needs a fresh start, it's Jake Moody. And good for him that he comes through for the Bears and kicks a game winner. Good on you, dude. Keep going forward. I hope you succeed.
I love it, man.
But I'm sure glad they got Pinheiro because he's been lights out.
Money. I love his moxie too. He's got a little attitude on him, doesn't he?
Yeah. He's got some toot. I love that.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into our next one. Kyle's best skill. Now you wanted to circle the block on this. I've said this many times, but it recently came up on the last show, and it was Kyle's best skill. Recently, we talked about there was a interview years ago. Kyle was the head coach of the 49ers still, though. And I believe it was an interview between him and Chris Sims, one of his college roommates and best friends. And I believe what the question, I'm paraphrasing, basically was along the lines of, tell me the greatest skill that your father imparted upon you, that you got from Mike Shanahan. What did you get from him? Tell me the number one skill that you got from him. And Kyle, without blinking an eye, said, how not to get fired. Right out of the way, said that. And I think that statement, it was a Freudian slip, but I also think that statement is kind of if you keep that as a common denominator around a lot of the decision-making that you don't understand with Kyle, things do start to crystallize, with why we see different offenses for different quarterbacks, why Kyle seems to always be in love with quarterbacks who are not his starting quarterback, why it seems that he is presumably falls out of love with his starting quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
By way of calling certain offenses with him. They have arguments on the field, if you will. Kyle will force you into doing things that he thinks that you and you alone can only do, and there's really no growth. We've seen things go as far as players and rookies. We've gone through it. I mean, all of our talking points and terms of phrase and the things that we say about Kyle pretty much all allude to this conversation, which is, how bad does he really want to win? Will Kyle Shanahan do everything to win? Or will he do everything to win his way?
Well, both. He will do everything to win because that feeds staying employed. And that's what he learned from his dad. But his way, we've seen that because he hasn't changed much in terms of his philosophy in the offensive line, for example, or not letting the quarterback audible at the line. and the pass coverage schemes from the center, et cetera. There's a lot of things where Kyle is fixated and said there will not be change here. And so that's part of it. But a bigger part of it is you look at this and say it's kind of the answer in the back of the book in terms of what they've made in decisions on personnel. It's rushing players back when they're hurt. That's about trying to win that game. It's basically being the Tom Thibodeau of the NFL. You just run your players out there until they drop. That's a Tibbs thing. That's a Kyle thing. And so Purdy and Juwan, they're both pretty upset about that. Extensions to older players that succeed in your system rather than keeping the roster balanced, hungry, where you got guys who don't have a bag, young age balance, and sound financially. And that last one is the one that the Yorks care about. Part of the reason this roster is so imbalanced and so expensive is because Kyle won't part with the guys who he succeeded with. And that leads to things like extending old players, McCaffrey, Trent, Kittle, Warner, all those guys. And then extending Ayuk, same thing. All of it is based on, I as an offensive coordinator need this guy. I trust him because I've won with him. Now, I look at the Ayuk decision as possibly one of the biggest decisions they've made in recent years that really came back to haunt them. Because you look at it and you say, had they traded Ayuk to Pittsburgh, they get the 20th pick back. If they had used that on an offensive line, and Kyle was reportedly looking at centers in that draft, you've got Graham Barton from Tampa Bay. You've got your center fixed. Right now, would you trade Ayuk for Graham Barton in a heartbeat?
Hell yes.
Would the Bucks? Not a chance.
No way.
And that's the result of that decision of Kyle saying, I'm going to stay employed because I trust Brandon Ayuk, and therefore I'm not willing to trade him. That's how your roster gets expensive. That's how your roster stays out of balance. That's how your roster becomes more fragile. And that's how your roster doesn't become complete, because you keep focusing on your guys as opposed to how do I build this roster to deal with the weaknesses. He doesn't think in those terms. He thinks, I'm going to do whatever I want to do on my account as a GM. Now, Steve-O says, audibles, shut up. Okay, whatever. My beef with Kyle is as GM. I think he's a rotten GM who makes terrible decisions. 2022 draft, 2023 draft, Trey Lance trade, keeping Ayuk and not drafting Graham Barton. Why are they in this position? Kyle Shanahan, GM. That's
drafting Jake Moody.
Moody too. Well, 2022-23 draft. That's all. That's all that stuff.
They're so bad drafts. They're such bad drafts.
And so why hasn't he been replaced as GM? Why haven't they at the very least said, okay, Kyle, you're a great offensive coordinator. You're a good head coach. Stay there. Stay in that lane. We're going to hire a GM who knows what he's doing to build the team. That's what they should do. They won't, because Kyle wants full control.
Where does John Lynch stand in all of this?
Lynch has
Does he really get away with everything? Because if you're looking at bad drafts, Tom, there's no way that you can have that conversation without including John Lynch.
Yeah,
what's his involvement?
Lynch has to be part of it too. But let's quote Lynch directly. Kyle has the 53. I have the 90. That's a direct quote from Lynch. And we know that Kyle has final control. He has final cut, as they say in Hollywood, on the roster. It's his call. All those, I call it the island of misfit toys. All those bad picks on weapons that failed. There's the island of misfit toys. Yeah, all those guys. Going back to Williams, Joe Williams from Utah.
Oh my God.
And now you're drafting Jordan James and you haven't played him down. Jordan Watkins and you haven't played him down. And your offensive line sucks. It's just, this isn't viable. You need a GM that's going to say, we have to fix the offensive line now.
Well,
Kyle
I don't
doesn't
think
do it. So that's all part of it. It's just Kyle is trying to protect himself and what he trusts to win in the moment. So there's no future planning involved. There's no horizon. It's just now. And that explains all of the decisions, especially Ayuk.
Yeah, it's clear that the organization is out on Ayuk. And I just think that the conversation is there ever going to be a conversation on, okay, Kyle, you did this. Kyle, you put this up. I don't understand. I believe that he has a skill set that keeps him viable, keeps the team viable, and that's enough to print money, to be honest with you.
And that's what the Yorks care about.
Yeah. So
there we are. So there are people that don't like this take from me. I grant that Lynch is part of the equation, but Lynch, by his own word, has said that Kyle has final cut on this. It's Kyle's baby. Let's treat it accordingly. Lynch isn't the one making these calls, especially Ayuk. We know Ayuk was Kyle's call alone against the entire organization. And they went with him anyway because he's Kyle Shanahan.
This sucks.
So
let's get into it.
That's part of it. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, but it's just Kyle as GM is not a good thing. That has to be changed. You want to keep him as coach, that's fine by me. But you have to replace him as GM. You have to. They won't. I think that Kyle will go in 2027. After the 2027 season, Kyle, Lynch, Brock, they'll all go. And it'll be a complete reboot.
Then it's horrible because then we're left with Jed. He might Singletary us and fucking hire somebody in a week or one day. What did he hire Singletary in like 48 hours? One day?
It was a ridiculous turnaround, yeah. There was no process.
That's the bigger conversation. Jed.
Yeah, well, my hope is that eventually they sell to Larry Ellison because they're not going to have the pockets to last long-term in the league. That's something that they've already sold their 10% stake in the team. The NFL capped that at 10%, or the Yorks would have sold more. Families are leaving sports. When the Buss family sells the Lakers, that tells you a lot.
Yeah, that tells you everything. It's too expensive for it to be a family sport anymore, a family endeavor. Billionaires are coming in with a lot of cash to throw around, and they just can't compete. Yeah. All right, so let's get into another super chat. Pandemi Lovato says, "Is CMC old? Is Kendrick Bourne old, out of prime?" Yes, and yes.
Yeah.
I hate to. You made it too easy for us, Pandemi. I'm sorry. let's get into Atlanta prep. All right, let's get into it, man. Atlanta. All right, 3-2 versus 4-2. They're incredibly balanced. Let's just get into it. Bijan Robinson is the guy. Okay, he is the apex predator. All right, he's a top producer through week 6. He's got 484 rushing yards. He's averaging 5.8 yards per carry, which is leading the NFL. He's got 2 touchdowns, but don't look. There's more. 338 receiving yards with 1 touchdown. I'm going to tell you this right now. He ranks top 5 in explosive plays this year with 1 catch for 57 yards and a touchdown. Okay. There's only 4 other players with bigger one play explosive plays than that with Bijan Robinson. The biggest thing that they do is they rush on first down. Outside zone is what they do out of all of the rushing that they do, which is heavily into how they handle their offense, which is pretty much split down the middle. They're a little bit over with about 57.8% of running the ball versus passing. But they love to run the ball on first downs. That's what they do. Okay. The majority of what they do as far as running the ball is in the first half. They go from 5.6 yards a carry in the first half into the second half. They drop all the way down to 3.8 yards per carry. So when the game gets tough, it shows me that they start putting things on Michael Penix Jr., who himself is having a pedestrian year, right? He's not having a great year.
Yeah.
But
he's inconsistent.
He is.
He's young. He's inconsistent.
First down tendencies, like we said, the first down runs are heavy. The 4-quarter rushing volume is high, but yet again low as far as yards. So what that tells me is that they pick up the running efficiency as far as how many times they run later in games, but the yards get lower, which means that they use Bijan Robinson to get them out of trouble late in games. Now, that's their offense. Drake London, 427 yards, huge target for Michael Penix Jr. That's his number 1 guy. You got to watch out for Kyle Pitts. He already has 223 yards and a touchdown on the season. One big thing, though, as far as their X factor, you would think that Bijan Robinson does a lot of their heavy hitting as far as tough runs, but Tyler Algieri, That's their guy that you really need to watch out for. He's got 187 rushing yards with 3 TDs out of 180 plus trip. I think 170 plus trips down to the red zone. The Falcons only have 7 red zone touchdowns. They struggle in the red zone. Okay, so that's something to bring up with them. Now, all of that's cute on offense. Defensively, they're dogs. They're fast. They get picks. They're like a polished Jags on defense. They're like the Jags, but polished. Like, they don't get as many takeaways as the Jags do, but they're right up there. All right. They get picks. This is going to be another tough going as far as facing their defense. And if you think about, even with Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Michael Pitts, not Michael Pitts, but Kyle Pitts, all of the guys that they have on offense, their defense is better than their offense. Yeah. Their defense is better than
their defense is why they're winning games.
Yeah. You should see, if you really want to look at what they did, and I know we've all seen it, but if you're living under a rock, it wasn't that offense that beat the Bills. It was that Atlanta defense. That Atlanta defense is for real. And that's the story going to face them. It's, what are we going to do against this defense? Tom, what do you got?
Right. Well, so let's start with, they're the top blitzing team in the league. Their blitz rate is astronomical, 39.9%. Against Buffalo, they blitz Josh Allen 56% of the time in his dropbacks. So they like the blitz. And part of the reason why is their linebackers are fast. 4-4, 4-5 guys. And all of them have pass rushing skills. So they send their linebackers. They'll send 5. They'll blitz. But they're constantly putting pressure on, and that's their defense. So it's kind of like the Rams, in that if you can beat that pressure and get the ball out quickly, even if it's a horizontal game, that's how you beat it. And that's what the Niners are going to have to do to beat this team, because their pressure is their defense. It creates everything else for them. But they've got tremendous athletes, all 11, every level of the field. They've got athleticism, and it makes it very hard to beat them. But you look at this team, you say first in team defense, fewest yards against, lowest yak against, first in pass D, 11th against the run. It's tough to beat this team. So what the Niners are going to have to do, and I think this is part of why Mac Jones is going to have to start, is you're going to need to have that quick release and the quick passing game to beat them. That's your path. And that's how the Niners are going to have to do this if they want to win.
Yeah. The biggest thing for them also is just understanding how our defense is going against this run game. Like I said, out of 159 rushing attempts, outside zone is what leads what they do. 89 attempts, 56% of their runs for 504 yards at 5.6 a carry and 3 TDs. That's their bread and butter. That's what they do. Okay.
Right.
Now, one of the things that I mentioned is most of their running comes on first down, specifically 85 attempts at 53.5% of all their runs come on first downs. They don't run a lot on third down. They've only got 20 attempts running the ball on third down, which is only 12.6% of their runs, and they've only gotten 58 yards on those. They primarily pass on third down, and the yards per carry that they have on third downs is only 2.9 yards per carry. So this is a team that loves to get ahead of the sticks, okay? They run early, and then they get downhill fast. Was something else that they also pepper into this offense that Michael Penix Jr. is struggling at, but they do a lot of play action. They do a ton of play action and play pass. And one thing that you must look out for is Bijan Robinson is an animal in pass protection. I'm telling you, when you are green dogging him, when you're green dogging Bijan Robinson, we need to watch out for Markel Williams, Bryce Huff, our edges, because when he's chipping, if you remember the way Clinton Portis used to pass pro.
Yeah.
Clinton Portis used to hurt people pass pro. Bijan Robinson is on that level. He blocks with bad intentions. He hurts defensive linemen. Also, another thing about him is that he's so physical in his pass protection that defenses start getting used to the physicality, and that's why he gets into the flats so wide open. He has this nice move where he comes in physical, like he's about to block you. He olays you, gets you with a knife, shock and shiver, and moves on, gets out, and leaves guys chasing. So that's something else that we have to pay attention to with Bijan Robinson, is that they're going to lull us to sleep, keeping him in as a 6-man for protection. They're going to do it a lot. He's a big kid, he's strong, and he's physical. But when they need a pop play, when they need something to catch us sleeping, the wheel routes, all right, the wheel routes with Bijan Robinson,
he leaks out and then one-on-one in the flat, and you can't deal with Bijan because he's that good that fast.
Yeah,
that makes it hard.
Now,
so you look at this team. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Coach.
No, go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
So you look at this team and you say, just break down how they play. Penix. I saw Penix play almost every game in his last season at UW. He's one of the most accurate deep passers I've seen. If he gets time, he'll pick you apart. So part of the problem for the Niners is you've got to worry about those explosives deep, especially to London and especially wide. Penix, being a lefty, prefers to throw left. And last week he was 8 for 10 throwing left of the hash marks. That's where he prefers to go. That's his sweet spot. He also likes to work the right sideline as well. In this season, anyway, he hasn't thrown the ball middle much. But with Fred out, what's going to be the most open for them is going to be throwing intermediate to deep middle. And let's see what he does there. Last year, he was very accurate and very productive, one of the league leaders throwing middle. And so is that what they're going to do? No, the Niners are going to have to determine where's he going with the ball and how do we deal with it. Saleh is going to have to stay ahead of that. And Penix is a weapon, especially when he's got all time to throw. And the problem there is the Niners are 31st in the league in sacks, 7 sacks in 6 games, no picks. And it's, all of that comes from losing Bosa, but it's also just, okay, how do you deal with it? If you send blitzers, now what? Because now your safeties are exposed and you've got one of the worst starting safeties in the league, whoever it is that starts instead of or along with Mustafa. Is it Pinnock? Is it Siegel? Both of them have quarterback ratings against over 120. They get beat. And so how do you deal with that deep and blitz? Penix is a lot worse against man than zone. So I hope that Saleh plays plenty of man, and let's see what we can do. Penix can create a lot of turnovers if he's harassed, if he's pressured. But if he has time to throw, he can pick you apart deep. He can pick you apart middle. And that's going to be a problem for the Niners is how do you deal with that? How do you get pressure on Penix? I don't know. How do you deal with Bijan, especially when most of his runs are wide and he's fast? How do you corner that? How do you maintain the edge? If there's ever a game where they're going to need Michael Williams to set the edge against the run, it's this one against Bijan.
Yeah, because that's what they do. Outside zone, it's going to be all on Bryce Huff and Michael Williams, right? If they get what they want, we'll never even if they get what we want, Jordan Elliott, Alfred Collins, and those boys, they'll never have a chance. They'll be chasing all game. All right. The biggest thing for me is focusing on third down. I understand that they bring a lot with Drake London and Bijan Robinson and Pitts, but third down, they're very bad on third downs. Their efficiency is very low. They, like we just talked about, they barely run on third downs, okay? They're averaging less than 3 yards per carry. I believe that focusing on nickel and dime packages should be preparing for their pass concepts in these situations, right? I believe that being able to have Jair Brown down there as a dime linebacker on third down situations. One thing about it is when you got a high flying offense, the intelligence part of the game comes into decisions, which is third down. Yeah. That's where I believe I like Michael Penix Jr. as a quarterback, but he's got work to do in the decision-making area. Understanding
that's where he's weakest is what do I do with the ball when should I be going at this target or should I be patient? He doesn't have the secure feel of the game that you see with other quarterbacks, but he's a work in progress. He's young. It'll take him time, but once he does, he'll be good. It's just that for now, he relies kind of overly much on what his strengths are. So that's throwing deep, throwing middle. And we'll see if that's how it plays out in this one. So the Niners have to contain Bijan wide, and they have to find a way to stop in at least some way, pressure Penix so that he can't just sit back there and fire away.
Yo, Gojira is a freaking menace. It was too good to ignore, bro. I tried to ignore it, bro.
That's money. Good on you, Gajere.
Wow. Good job. Love that shit.
Boom.
So good.
Potty blow.
I was never going to grow up.
That was great, man.
Right.
Thanks for that.
So, okay. Also, just kind of touching into my second key that I have for the offensive side of the ball is that I do recognize that the Atlanta Falcons, they have a lot of blitz pressure. That's what they do. Their pressure rate and their blitz rate is among the best in the league. Screen game. Now we break out the screen game.
And you've got one of the best screenbacks in the league. Use them.
It's time, bro. They got to break out the screens. They can get some real good stuff going with Bijan Robinson and not Bijan Robinson, but B-Rob, Brian Robinson Jr. and CMC on the field together. I believe that could be something that can help them out online. We're going to cover it more. This isn't the last time. This is just the first time. We got a Sunday night slate. It's going to be a good one. Give me your prediction for this one. You ready?
Atlanta 27-20. I think that there's still going to be a carryover of missing Fred, that it takes more than a week to adjust to what they're going to have to become. And so I think that there's going to be some growing pains, especially throwing middle.
They'll slow this one down a tick. I think it's going to be 20-14. I believe that we'll probably score late, but we'll score early, and it's going to just be tough sledding. I really think that the bulk of our conversation really wasn't where it should be, which is on that defense. Atlanta's defense is no joke.
So much speed. Part of the problem for the Niners is that they don't do well when they face speed. That's why they had difficulty with Jacksonville. Atlanta's more of the same.
Oh, and two things on this defense. One, they run 5 down linemen. So buckle up, Buttercup. That offensive line ain't gonna be no doubles. Everybody get a defensive lineman. All of them are going to get separated. We know what happens when this offensive line gets separated, where they all got to work. Ain't no group projects. And number 2, don't look now, but Raheem Morris is very familiar with this offense. He was with Kyle in Washington in 2012. He was with Sean McVay with the Rams. He knows this offense. He was under it. He was under this offense when Mike Shanahan was the head coach and Kyle was just an offensive coordinator. Raheem Morris knows this offense. So ain't going to be nothing that we do that's going to be surprising these cats.
Raheem knows this offense backwards, forwards, sideways. And his offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, who comes from the Rams. So
come on.
Same thing. They're playing Rams South. So there's not going to be any surprises for Atlanta in this game. The one thing I would point to after we've thrown all these dark clouds out, Atlanta's no good in red zone defense. They're 24th. They've allowed a touchdown 2/3 of the time. So if the Niners can get to the 20, this is one of the few teams in the league that doesn't stop it. And now that you've got Kittle, you've got a chance to convert. So that's a Niner weakness that could become a strength in this matchup. But can you deal with this defensively? Can you hold back Atlanta's attack while you're still adjusting from life after Fred? That's my fear. That's where I think they lose this one.
You think Brock goes?
I think Jones goes because they need that quick attack. They need somebody that gets the ball out faster than Brock can.
Hey, Tom, don't look now, but we did it again. We
Got
did it again. All right. Hey, what do you got for the rest of the week, brother?
Ashley Ariana and I are going to stream tomorrow because we missed our normal Tuesday because she was flying back home from Tampa. So we'll do that Thursday, 3:30 Pacific. And then the rest of the weekend is just watch you in the live watch stream and right. Same old.
Right now, I just voted now for us to go into our 4-man front that's being hosted on Patreon, so we can go ahead and switch over there if you guys are doing it. Tomorrow, I've got the coaches meeting with Grant, and we will be here. Hey, man, this is the coach signing off for me and my man Tom. Stay low and keep your feet moving. Holla at you guys. Peace.